you are.
Hello, how are you?
Hi. Hi.
How's it going?
It's so good. It's so good to have live this,
Yeah, I,
whatever
I enjoy
this
that
is.
too.
Yeah.
I like that a
Yeah.
lot. It's
Yeah.
awesome. So cool to see you and meet you.
Same. Super same. Yeah. Yeah. How are you doing? How's your day so far?
Good. Finally landing. Just like,
That breath. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I was listening to your
Mm.
podcast earlier and I was like, wow, this is so grounding.
Mm.
It's so beautiful. I'm like, wow, this is great.
Oh,
Like I
good.
felt my body slow down. I'm like, yeah, this is great.
Oh, lovely. Lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
that gift.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Well, any kind of
Yeah.
grounding, conversationally things you might want to do or speak to before before I like start us?
That's a good question. I feel like you're just like really good about that naturally. So I'm
Hmm.
curious, like, if there's anything sort of like twirling around for you. I don't know.
Yeah, I noticed for me, my belly is kind of activated, so maybe I'll just like, and if you want to as well.
Yeah, a little bit of movement. That feels nice.
Yeah. I'm kind of encouraging my belly, which is where I feel my inner child kind of hangs out.
Mm, nice.
Yeah, be reminded that all is right in the world.
Mm,
Yeah, we're all held, we're all loved, and the clarity for what comes arrives when it arrives. Ooh,
it's beautiful.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here we are. I would love it if you could say your name because you're going to say it with your flair as opposed to my awkward flair.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Leila Ghazal.
Mm, beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and part of what's like in my mind is
Yeah, I'm so
4
curious.
4-1. You're a 4-1.
Oh yeah. That. It's
Yeah,
a big human
so
design topic. Yeah.
yeah, and we don't have to stay there for long, or at
Mhm.
all. And we're here gathering together so that we can talk about your offerings for the upcoming High Desert Human Design Conference that's happening in September here in Santa
Mhm.
Fe. And yeah, I always love to hear from the person of
Mhm.
how did you and human design find each other?
That's a great question. So that is, um, wow, I'm not sure why I blanked there. So it was a slow process for me. I mean, I
Mm,
feel like as an emotional being, it took me a long time to actually accept a new system, as it
mm,
normally does. I feel like things have to kind of come to me a few times before I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, this is worth diving down. Um, Looking back, it does seem like things were on a very specific trajectory. It's almost like, if I get pulled right or left, I'm always kind of on this rail that I get pulled back to. I think that's the 4
mm,
1 aspect.
mm,
But basically, the way I found out about human design was through a mutual friend. Basically, we had a gathering. So I used to live in Brooklyn. We lived in
mm.
a burner house. So lots of Burning Man parties. And
Ah.
yeah, some fun people came over and they were like, "Hey, what's your big three?" And I'm like, "I have no idea. Do you want to tell me how to find that out?" And they're like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Have you heard of human design?" I'm like, "No, tell me. I'm very curious. I'm open to learning." And it kind of went from there. It was
Mm,
just a curiosity, that
mm,
I ended up going down for a very, very long time. And,
mm,
I came and I went. And it was very fluid in my learning process because I very much entered into the experiment as an experiment from the beginning. So it wasn't really it was intellectual for a little bit, but I think I automatically jumped in sort of
Mm.
into the embodiment because it was that around that time that I began sort of feeling into my body a little bit more. So it all happened kind of at the same time, which was cool.
Got it. And if I
Yeah.
can ask, was
Hmm.
this pre-Saturn return, post-Saturn return? Like, I don't
That's a
remember
great
if you're
question.
already post or, yeah, I like to
Yeah,
not do
thank
too
you.
much research so it can just be like, look at me learning about you.
Oh, I love the surprises. I can very
Yeah.
much relate. I know what you
Mm.
mean. So I was pre-Saturn return actually. So all of this happened pre-Saturn return. My Saturn return happened or started, I should say, in March of 2023. So I'm
Ah,
very much still in it, very much
yeah.
maybe at the tail end though. It's kind of fading a
Mm.
little bit and I can feel the fading because it
Mm.
felt very much like some karma clearing around this
Ah.
time.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, because Saturn's also my chart ruler. I'm an Aquarius rising, and so I tend to mix the astrology with the human design quite a bit, and so I have that sort of framework in terms
Uh-huh.
of just kind of putting everything together and then synthesizing it.
Yay.
So yeah, Saturn has been very, very active in my life as of lately. So
Mm.
that's a whole, I feel like, topic in itself that maybe we can just talk about some other
For sure, for sure. And can I
time.
ask, like, not to
Hmm.
open it too much, but did your
Hmm.
profile change with your Saturn return human design cycle?
Ooh. That's a great question. I don't think I've ever looked that up. Or I
So I,
might have, but yeah, if you want to look it up, please, by all means.
okay, but is it okay to have your birth details like out in the world?
Yeah,
Or do you
that's
want me to
fine.
do it incognito? Okay. Yeah, I just always
It's up to
love,
you.
yeah.
It's up to you. I can
Well,
also check while you're doing that. So.
no, I've got it. I've got you up right here. So cycles.
Cool.
Yeah, and then your Saturn return chart. Okay, so I'll
That's a
make it.
great question.
Yeah, because that's one that I like looking at when I'm working with clients.
Mm.
If they're in curiosity around like, what do I want to
Yes, so
say?
it's two
Like
four,
time of
right? Two
life.
four,
Yeah. No, 2-5.
2 5. Ooh.
You got
Ooh,
some
that
shit to
projection
say.
field.
You got some shit to
Yeah.
say. Well, and we had dialogued a little bit about you connecting with Brenya, right? With her.
Yes.
And so she's like, so how birth cycles were explained to me from human
Hmm.
design is that like each major crop each major cycle, it's like that information kind of like stays with you. Your 4-1 is always your primary, but it's like 2-5
Hmm.
becomes like a tone that you would know.
Mm,
And
yeah, that
ooh,
makes sense.
look at your cross and your two
Oh,
fives. Rulership. What?
no, this makes so much sense. I'm like really, I was so confused for such a long time where I was
Ah,
just like, why do I feel like such a chameleon? I feel like this cross of rulership 2 5 thing happening. And like now it's confirmed. Thank you.
of course.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm so
Of
grateful.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, okay, so I want to stay with your chart a little bit if that's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally.
And here I can bring that back up. Yeah, there we go. And then
This is
this.
so much fun. I love
Oh,
your
good.
three process.
Cool. Oh, this is what I want. Okay, so first of all, friend, you're a manifester.
Mhm.
Like when we were messaging, I was like, "Oh, you're so kind. You're so like, I love
Thank you.
manifestors. Like somebody super close to me is an emotional manifestor, actually on the cross of
Um,
rulership. Interesting.
ooh.
And there's so much power that I feel from this, the manifestors that I know in my life. And it always kind of like cracks something in my awareness when I have
Mm.
manifestors that want to learn from me. I'm like, I'm a generator. You're supposed to be ruling
Mm.
me. So,
Aw.
so that reflection of like, I feel a lot of gentleness
Mm.
in how I experience your energy, you know, in this
Aw.
distilled or vortexed way. So yeah,
Yeah.
so the question that I have, unless you want to say anything.
I was just going to say thank you for that beautiful reflection. It's always so wonderful to hear feedback about how
Mm,
people experience me. I really appreciate hearing that.
mm, mm. Um, you're so welcome. And I'm curious, so you
Mm-hmm.
go up to your throat from many ways, but
Mm-hmm.
manifestory way,
Mm-hmm.
3635, transitorianess.
Yep. Yep.
And your root is
Yep.
emoting and has a break with the 22.
Mm-hmm.
How do you
Mm-hmm.
experience that? What do you notice?
Woo! That is such a big question. I love it. I love it. So, the way I experience my chart, I should say, just
Mm,
because there is a lot of synthesis in the sense that because I'm a single definition, it almost feels as though everything works at the same time. And it's like everywhere all at once.
mm,
And so it feels like my root is sometimes activating my spleen, and then my spleen gives me sort of like the instant, like, okay, this is the truth, but then it's not loud enough for me to actually go off of, or, my emotional solar plexus will be like, yes, but wait, and I'll tell you when the right time is. And
uh-huh,
then it'll pull me towards experiences that require that 22 to be present in some form or another. And
uh-huh,
so it's interesting because currently I believe Saturn is transiting in gate 22, and I'm really getting to feel that 1222 channel
uh-huh.
or emotional wave. And that's been really active in my emotional process because the wave seems to be a lot shorter. And so instead of my urges versus rest being like such a long collective process that seems to have this rippling effect or this ripple effect, in the collective, it's very short. It's like bursts of energy where I create, and it's very musical and beautiful
Uh-huh.
and creative. And it's just such a different, frequency. And I've noticed that I've attracted a lot of 22s into my life, but then having it as a transit, a long-term transit, has been very much. I'm telling you, the Saturn's really playing a big role in my life. So
Yeah.
that's been really beautiful. So that's how I've experienced it so far. Unless you have any more maybe nuanced questions.
I do actually. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
curiosity for me, somebody who has 3955 as opposed
Mm-hmm.
to 1222. So the fact that
Mm.
you are experiencing it in a different way than somebody who had it, naturally in their chart, like
Mm-hmm.
how you spoke about the wave being different, individual versus the collective. Yeah, I'm curious
Mm.
if you have any feedback or perspective on how the wave feels above the solar versus below the solar.
Ooh, I love this question. I love
Mm,
this. I love this. Yes, I do have a bit of a something to compare to now that,
hmm.
I've been experiencing the 3955 for such a long time because obviously, 1222 and 55 or 3955 are both individual,
Right.
and they can both be melancholic. I mean, all emotional waves I feel like can be melancholic. And so it's very interesting experiencing that like high versus low. And that's actually something I've been exploring recently. So it's very interesting that you're asking me this question. I haven't really had a chance to verbalize it. So
Mm,
I experienced 3955 as like a theatrical performance of like the breadth of all of the emotions that exist within
uh-huh.
the emotional realm, right? Just kind of like trying different ones on, going from, just being very quick in a sense, right? Like the moodiness is almost like being really happy and then feeling like you're in love, but then feeling that yearning and then feeling that, you know what I mean? Just like this
Yeah.
wave of different feelings coming through. Whereas like the 1222 almost feels like there needs to be that externalization because of that connection to the throat. So it's
Mm,
almost as though the root pushes it's almost as though the root pushes kind of like the different sensations It's more of like a feeling, whereas like the other one's like, I have to do something about this.
Ah,
Even though, you know, I've also experienced the 3041, and that one feels a little bit that way as well, except it's more about like the outward expression um of that, to sort of like fulfill that need of yearning.
hmm.
But it has like a separate quality. Like there's so much nuance because they all kind of feel a certain way. So it's very much about like experiencing the frequency, and putting words to how to compare them is a lot. It's actually something I'm going to be covering in one of the lectures, actually.
Good.
I wasn't sure if I wanted to, but I feel like now that we're talking about it,
Ah,
I think it'd be an interesting thing to dive into, because I feel like the emotional wave is so rich and there are so many of them and the qualities are all different. And I feel like, so I cohabitate with my partner who is an emotional generator,
mm,
and we have 3041, 3955, 659, 1222 at the moment, and 3536.
mm.
So almost all of the waves. And so I've
Ah,
really had the experience of kind of how all of these compare to each other. And so I'm definitely interested in like actually like writing it down, maybe sitting down and actually like writing it out. So I think that would be really, really interesting.
well, manifester. Because as you speak about it, I don't know, and I'm
Mhm,
curious if what I'm tracking is
mhm.
your one. You know, I
Mm,
put
yes.
the unconscious, the form, and the subtleties
Mm,
of how you spoke about the below the solar versus above the solar, and it has to get,
mhm,
maybe in action versus, out. Anyway, I don't need to
mhm.
re-say what you said, but there's something about being unconscious one in your profile that I'm catching, or I'm curious if I'm catching.
Ooh, absolutely, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, it's probably also the 1648, you know, the 48 is just like, ooh, what well are we going down
Yep.
today?
Yep. And I
Yep.
heard you speak about
Uh,
the music of things. Like, are there like instruments or ways that you're putting music out, if you want to speak to that?
I feel like I feel like you have like the psychic ability to pick up on something, yeah, some things that have been very alive for me lately.
Mm.
This is you're the first person hearing this, so I'm really
Ah.
excited to be announcing this, that I'm launching an EP soon. Actually, it's a human design EP, and yeah, I was so excited to tell you because of sort of our email exchange, and we were chatting a
Yeah.
little bit. And I mentioned that you mentioned, would you mind? Is it okay if I
Say
mention?
whatever. Say it all.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned something about the sacral and maybe the
Mm.
feelings of being too much, and I know
Mm.
that's a pretty common in my experience, what I've experienced with around people who have a defined sacral, and so I wanted to write a song to appreciate the
Ah.
generators, the pure
Ah.
generators. That was the main idea behind it. And
Ah.
I realized so many people just need empowerment at the moment, and so I decided to write those out. I mean, I used AI because obviously Manifestor needs some
Mm.
sacral help, you know.
Mm.
um, but I'm so excited to actually be launching this EP, and
Ah.
I actually am wanting to launch it at the conference, maybe for
I
the first
imagine
time.
I imagine Jonah would flip and be
I'm
so
so
celebratory.
excited.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. I would, yeah, I haven't even suggested it, so I think that would be, yeah, I'm psyched for it just in general. So I think
Aw.
it'll be really exciting to share it with, you know, with a group of people who would really kind
Mm.
of understand and appreciate in a way that others maybe wouldn't be able to. So I think, yeah.
Yeah, and to give more context maybe to how I was experiencing, or what was around that exchange, I think you had
Mm,
said some words about it's I'm enjoying experiencing your
hmm.
sacral flow or your buzz. And I was like,
Yeah,
really? Because I'm like,
yeah.
add that to emotional, like, my bottom
Mm,
for energy centers are all lined up, and I'm like,
Mm,
once my and I'm plus I'm action sense. So once my teeth
mm,
are stuck, like a dog who holds onto a toy and you
hmm.
lift them, like I'm very much
I
um
love that.
but to hear, the reflection back from somebody who has, undefined sacral, to me,
Mm,
that's a beautiful reflection
yeah,
because of that, your wisdom around who's in
oh,
healthy sacral experience. Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And one question I wanted to ask you about
Mhm.
your sacral is, how do you experience your five? Like, do you
Ooh.
have big consistent rhythms? I mean, it's your trajectory, not today, but you're noticing
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great one. That's a great one. Your questions are so much fun. Um,
Cool.
okay, so five. Five. That's been a really interesting one my entire life. I feel like
Mm.
I was a 15 until my Saturn return.
Ah.
Um, or at least I, attracted 15 into my life,
Mm.
in whatever forms that was. And the five seems to be really anchoring itself, because, like I said, I cohabitate with a sacral partner, and so
Hmm.
that is, and we lived in very small quarters for a very, very long time, and I was so resistant to the five for years. And then I noticed, the more I would open up to sort of my spiritual awakening, let's say, because I had several of them,
Mm.
and the more I would have these like shocking experiences that would kind of take me out, and take me on the ride of the 3536, where I would
Mm.
go and travel and do all the things, and then once I come home, that's when I start to really anchor into that five. And
Mm.
so it's funny, my partner literally mentioned, she's like, you're very fixed these days. And I was just like, yes, I'm moving into my five. Obviously this is also because of the 4-1, but I think I'm definitely moving into that five energy more so.
Mm.
And I think as a manifester, it was something I really, really just did not like. I mean, I just couldn't understand it. I'm like, why would I want to have habits? This doesn't make any sense to me. But then,
Ah.
I think with age, it starts to really set in, especially because it's the North Node. So I think, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Wow. And the other piece that I'm tracking and looking at your chart is
Hmm.
your design Earth
Mm,
maybe wants a defined sacral. So when you named like calling or feeling that draw of the 15s
yeah.
out there, you also get your identity or your G center. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
definitely.
right
Yeah,
on.
having the undefined G center has been probably one of the most challenging things
Oh,
in my chart,
more so than the
at least
ego,
in my
eh?
experience.
Uh-huh.
I think so. I think so. I think I've sort of formed my personality around
Mm.
having an undefined ego, and I feel like I've sort of come to terms with that, at least for the moment. I'm sure I will move into that at some point in the future. But yeah, the Open G Center has been a real,
Yeah.
maybe because of all the deconditioning that needs to be done around that. I think because there are more open gates around that area. That's
Hmm.
probably what it is.
And you've got a lot pointing too, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely.
And that
Yeah, great
14 being,
observation.
yeah, well, and your 14 being so powerful, right? Like
Yeah.
it, and it's because I talk about when I try to explain like or hanging gates
Hmm.
or energy centers that are undefined, I kind of think of it as like a toolbox with tools that aren't animated
Mm,
yet. They're
I
like,
like
we're
that.
ready. What are we gonna do?
Yeah, it definitely feels that way. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can see that with the 9, the 42, the 5, the
Hmm.
14, the 7. Absolutely. I mean, all of them, all of the hanging gates, but I feel like especially the 14, just because of that
Mm.
pressure,
Mm.
with large groups of people, right? Because it's like
Mm.
activating the Wa, and just like, oh my God, it's me. I'm initiating. Okay, cool.
Right. Right.
So that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I feel myself transitioning us to what you're going to be speaking
Perfect.
about,
Mhm.
and I'm going to take us off um, so that we can, like do the look at each other thing.
Yeah.
And there we go. Okay. Um, hold on, there was a question. Um, is it gone? Is it gone? It's gone.
Was it with the about the Norse shamanism or
No, it's okay.
okay.
So, more context. So, in looking at your website and seeing
Hmm.
some of your Instagram posts, I mostly am on
Hmm.
Instagram. I don't know if you're on other platforms. Um,
Me too. Mostly
okay.
Instagram.
So I get a lot of like woo woo, other planets,
Hmm.
cosmic-y, let's dance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And w- I would, okay. I mean, my P sun is 49, so mystical way, check.
Hmm.
And
Cool.
what I'm what I'm curious to engage you in a conversation, if you feel aligned, is how do you experience the mystic or the other spaces, the beyond, however one understands that, to like say, go do this, or we got you, or I'm curious. And so since you're such a person who's a manifester and who has this trajectory of the cosmic, etc., I'd love to hear.
Yeah. There's a lot in there.
Yeah.
um, okay, let me see if I can do this justice. So
Mm,
I think I think what happened was I've had so many different spiritual awakenings, and
mm,
it happened at pretty auspicious times, I should say. I mean, if I told you the years that I've had these experiences, you'd be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So, like 2012,
aha,
2020,
aha,
I feel like it was kind of like there was a wave, there were
aha.
several waves through which this happened. And a lot of the experiences that I've had, I mean, I'm also personal view, like color, sixth
Mhm.
color. And so the aliens just kind of come to me, you know what I mean?
Ah.
It's been, I believe since 2017 that I've been having experiences with otherworldly beings. I've had,
Mm,
um, and this was not something that I've necessarily chosen in this lifetime. It was not something I really went towards. It was always something that came to me.
mm.
And basically, what happened in 2020 is that I had a major spiritual awakening on the Lion's Gate,
Aha.
the 8-8 portal.
Yeah.
And I started just having these communications with these planets. Sort of, it was outside of the realm of anything I'd experienced within any sort of community or informational, intellectual basis, on any intellectual basis. It was just experiential. Everything that was happening to me was nothing that I could explain. And
I'm
so
hearing 35,
around
36. Continue.
yeah, exactly, exactly. And I also have 61 activated 3 times in my chart. And so very much the
Ah,
mystical was just coming in.
right.
Lots of downloads. And so what's interesting is that I just started having these experiences with, whether it was deities, with aliens, with
Ah,
people who have passed on. I mean, they were
ah,
just coming to me, and I all of a sudden was able to see underneath the veil. So the 2022 was, or I'm sorry, 2012 was very much like a preparation for that. It was very like within this world,
mm,
within, the structure of society and the matrix, like what is going on, what is the reality beneath and underneath everything. Whereas like in 2020, it like opened up to the galactic and to
mm,
the universal. And 2021, 2022, up until I guess 2023, it became the integration of that in a way where I wasn't necessarily absorbing information from the outside because I wanted to make sure it was all through correct discernment within body wisdom.
mm,
So I'm very careful around that. So I don't necessarily give anyone advice. They mainly experience what's worked for me, what I believe or see to be the case, obviously, always from my perspective. And so I always frame it in that way. So whenever I have clients who come to me and ask me like, okay, can you figure out where my soul has been on other planets? I'm like, yes, of course, I'll
Ah.
paint you a timeline. But then let's always sort of mirror it back with your experience,
Mm.
and also what feels right to you within your soul and what your body is telling you is true. I will never like put my framework onto your experience. It's
Yeah.
always coming from you, and I just kind of go back and forth. And I don't know if this is something you normally look at in a chart, but this is something that has been really helpful for me, is seeing that my manifestor activation is all unconscious. So it's all through the
Mm.
body, whereas
Mm.
like personality wise, it's like reflector. And so there's very much like
Right.
that sampling, there's that feeling aspect of everything. And so I definitely can feel the nuances of things, even though I don't have that reflector aura necessarily. But I do
Ah.
see personality wise, once I sort of tune out of my body and just put my mind at the forefront, I can see very clearly.
Mm.
Um, and so, yeah, it's like a balance between those two aspects of like, where do I step in and actually like, you know,
Yeah.
present or kind of engage with the person, or where it's just stepping back and taking a look and seeing what I see and then expressing that.
Mm.
I'm not sure if I answered your question. I feel like I said a lot.
I'm here for all of it.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah, because it's the like I'm hearing the like these moments of significant time and then in session, how those are appearing and like uh to anchor it into a piece that you spoke to. So the song, like,
Hmm.
did that feel like somebody from the beyond or something in the cosmos was like, here you go? Anyway, maybe I'm asking it to be too like, I want you to put a pathway, like, how did you go from A to Z? Like, but
It's
that's
okay.
that's kind
Yeah,
of what's
that's what's
curious
coming
for
up for
me.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So for that specific, okay, so I'll just give you a little bit about my process. So up until for from 2020 until 2023, everything was galactic. It just like exploded into this whole thing. I got connected, my network became all the galactic people, and just, for
Mm.
one, I jumped from network to network. And then in 2020, sort of closer to the end of 2023, that whole thing shut down for me. And so did like, other communities. It just kind of closed up. And I was like, okay, we're moving on to something else. Human design just expanded, just exploded. And I was like, oh, okay, this is where we're going. And
Mm.
then instead of receiving from, let's say, Arcturus or the Arcturian beings or the Pleiadians or whoever I was in
Mm.
contact with before. Again, always making sure that this is actually them, or
Mm.
whatever feels correct within my body. Um, I started connecting more so with my own higher self.
Ah.
So ever since 2024, it's almost more like more of me has been coming in. It felt
Mm.
very much like, ah, yes, this is the frequency of my own soul. I can see this. And that's when I started really working with the magnetic monopole, just experientially, and trying to
Ah.
really, yeah, bridge that gap a little bit.
Ah.
So there's a lot of overlap that I have with galactic and human design that I'm trying to really form and put together at the moment. Um, but yeah, and so if you're asking about sort of what came in more recently, that's all been from my own soul, what it feels like. Like I'll hear a voice, but it doesn't
Mm.
feel unfamiliar, or it doesn't feel like someone
Ah.
else telling me something. You know what I mean? It feels very
Aha.
much like me. Um, yeah, that's been the more recent experience.
This is so good. So good.
Oh, cool.
I'm looking up there because I've got rainbows on my ceiling and I'm like, yes, that's
Oh,
what's
that's so
happening.
sweet. Oh, amazing.
Yeah. Um,
Cool.
yeah, because this friend of mine or this person that I'm connected with who's a manifester, they're inner vision.
Mhm,
And so
mhm,
it's interesting to hear you talk about like how that you're connected to your higher self or the monopole. And it's
mhm.
interesting, like I'm trying because that person's not deep into human design. And so I want to like pull the curtain, like,
Mm,
wow, what's happening here? So it's interesting
yeah.
to think about maybe that's a component that that person is experiencing of the inner vision is their way of convening with their higher self. So right on.
That's possible. That's
Yeah.
possible. Absolutely. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I'm outer visions. And so for me, it's almost like I
Ah.
see it within the outside world. It's almost like I'm very much in things, right? The
Ah.
four kind of drags me into things, and so does the wet kitchens. I'm like always in the middle of what's
Ah.
going on. But I find divinity within that,
Oh,
right? So it's like I find that within my surroundings, within everything. I mean, this will sometimes like speak to inanimate objects. I'm like, I see the divinity in you, and I appreciate it.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very much
Yeah.
here, everywhere. Yeah, it's cool.
Totally. Yeah. It's like as I hear you speak about it, it's like the veil isn't as present, or
Yeah.
it's yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why time is a thing for me where I'm just like, oh, wait, what? Oh, yeah, perfect timing, of course. Just I'm on that wave.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to transition to hearing you speak to the two offerings. It sounds like they're both happening Saturday. So, or
I
maybe
believe
that's a different time. Oh,
one is Saturday, one is Sunday, but I mean, who knows? I feel like the schedule is changing, so
okay. Yeah.
yeah.
There's just a part of me that's like, do you need some so you need some sacral zhuzh? Like that's a lot to do in one
Thank you.
day.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I definitely will on that day. I'll definitely come to you, be like, oh my God, please, please.
Whatever you need, whatever you need. I'm happy to
Oh, thank
share.
you.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
so
So
sweet.
I'd love to
Um,
hear the theme, the
mhm.
whatever you want to speak to. I'm here for it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
I'll just kind of give you a rundown of what I'm thinking here. So, okay, so I'll start with the um journeying to the nine realms using the body graph. So that was an interesting one. So that basically is almost like a culmination of an experience that I've had beginning with the dream world. So my
Mm.
experience with the dream world, the dream rave. And so I've kind of processed a lot of that information in a way where I didn't really fully understand it, right? Like it was really confusing to me. It was not fully present for me. And then at the same time, I was experiencing this track, this shamanic track that I was on
Mm.
that I didn't even know why I was on. I was like, oh, I guess I'm doing this thing. I guess I'm into Norse shamanism now. I don't understand
Mm.
how I got here, but okay, that's cool. And so I was kind of finding a way to understand the two separately. And then a download came in that said, and this was a voice.
Mm.
This was in 2023. This was a voice where it said, wake up. It was like 5 in the morning. And I'm like, what do you want? Because I'm a late sleeper. I'm like, I don't like to wake up early, but I like tried to go back to sleep, and it was just like, no, 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 you're gonna overlay the body graph on the nine worlds of Norse shamanism, and I'm like, okay, can we do it like later? Like I'm trying to sleep, and I was like, no, you're gonna do this right now, and I was like,
Uh-huh.
oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
So so a bunch of it came in where I started overlaying the different worlds on the center. So basically, if for anyone um, who isn't familiar with Norse shamanism, it's based on a group of Eddic poems that were written in. I'm sorry, I don't even remember the date. I'm not an expert on Norse shamanism, just as a full disclaimer. Basically, there's the importance of the tree Yggdrasil, which is the world tree. It basically contains the nine different worlds of the
Mm.
other realm, right? So the spiritual realms where the gods live and the dwarves and the giants, and it's
Ah.
basically like a map
Mhm.
of the spiritual world. And so, for some reason, I was told to overlay some of the body graph
Uh-huh.
centers on there, and sorry, I'm just trying to remember because this was kind of a while ago that I received
Yeah.
this download. And because I think so my mentor had actually been teaching me how to shamanic journey. I had been doing this for a few years already, and I had learned how to go into the body through the chakras
Uh-huh.
into this world, right? So I was basically traveling through my own body And then as my knowledge of human design was flourishing, all of this stuff started just coming together. And
Yeah.
so the different worlds basically start corresponding with certain dreams I was having. So there's also the connection to the light realm and the demon realm and the earth realm, and all of these things are basically connected, that I'm basically going to be organizing in a much
Hmm.
more efficient and beautiful way once I
Yeah.
present. But
Yeah.
that's basically the gist and the idea of how it came in.
Wow. And I'm I don't know this structure.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm curious to ask,
Oh,
are
mhm.
unicorns a part of?
That's so cute. I don't believe
Oh,
unicorns are
okay.
part of mythos, but I know if you're looking for something like rainbow wise, there is a rainbow bridge.
Well, the reason why it's coming in to ask is I've worked with people who see different things than I do, and they're
Mm-hmm.
like, the unicorns are working with you. And so they were
Ooh,
giving an explanation that the unicorns are like so high, like as far as like
interesting.
distance,
Mm-hmm.
in the spaces. So it kind of
Interesting.
tracks that they wouldn't be, and I got excited maybe they were in the nine spaces. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, I have not gotten to that point where there are
mm.
unicorns. I've not heard that. I can ask my mentor. What I am familiar with is the light elves. So that's basically high
Ah.
up. So we have Asgard, which is the head, which is where all the deities are.
Mm.
Valhalla basically. And then we have the headset, or I'm sorry, the Ajna is the Alfheimer, where the light elves are. So they're not. There's a difference. So they're not like earth elves. They're
Hmm.
like technology elves, or like the light beings
Oh,
almost.
okay.
Yeah, I can like dive into that at during the workshop, but there's just so much. And then so we go from this like very
Hmm.
high sort of like frequency
Yep.
level into like the very deep, very like
Hmm.
earth based,
Yeah.
you know design realm.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting how there's that like dichotomy where I
Hmm.
I would think, I have no idea about unicorns, but I would think it'd be in like the personality space, maybe in the light realm or something like that.
Yeah, the Lightroom tracks for me the person that I was working with because I was like, well, can I ask my unicorns for help? And they're like, of
That's so
course.
cool.
And they're like, but the unicorns, they don't want to fix your bank account. Like they want the big
Mm,
stuff. So,
yeah,
or just
makes
to name
sense.
like their realm is because I was asking, because this person was explaining the unicorns used to be here, among people, but
Hmm.
they're now elsewhere. So anyway, blah blah blah.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. It's definitely part of mythology. I'm just wondering which one it's a part of.
Sure.
Because I can think of like obviously there are fairies, there's like
Hmm.
the Celtic
Yep.
sort of. So I wonder if there's some like overlap with that. I'm curious. I'll definitely look it up.
Yeah. No, no, I don't mean to engage your one researcher. It was more just there's unicorns in there.
It's just like my 40 is like, oh, I want to know now, like I want to go
Oh,
deep.
cool.
So
Well,
yeah,
if it's
that'd be
if it's
cool.
true for you, feel free. I'm curious and I'm
Yeah,
happy to bump
cool.
into the information as it comes. Yeah.
Cool.
So that's the
So
one. Yeah.
right. So that's the
Yeah.
one. The second one, actually, this has been building for me for a very, very long time. So
Hmm.
I actually, before I entered the human design space, I was in psychiatry. So I worked in
Ah.
psychiatry. I was the lead researcher for a clinical trial involving psilocybin. So I
Ah.
was in psychedelic research.
Ah.
So that was interesting for a while. Um, like I said, it's like a community that just opens up and then it closes. It's just
So
depending on
amazing.
where I'm at. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. So with psychedelics, I was really exposed to. It's kind of like you mentioned. It's like I'm very like out there woo woo. Like I've kind of claimed that already as part of my experience, and so moving from a place of looking into the matrix,
Mm.
it was very interesting because then I had this language where I was able to see, this is what I like about human design, because it gives me the language to explain frequency, right? So
Mm.
it's like I could feel it, I can see it, I can experience it. Like I can sometimes see auras, right? Like I
Mm.
can see someone's aura, I can feel it, I know where it is, I can tell when somebody's, sacral being versus non-sacral being. I can
Uh-huh.
sometimes tell what gates they have or channels based on our interactions. And so I'm very attuned to that sort of information. And so whenever I had the language to express some of the um, behavioral experiences I was seeing, or even like the behavioral disruptive experiences that people were experiencing as disruptive, I was curious about that. And
Mm.
so it basically um, it engaged the part of me that needed to build that foundation, sort of coming into this until to where I am now. It's almost like the 4-1 has taken me on several paths before, where I ended up, studying. I graduated with a psychology degree. I got my master's in clinical psychology.
Mm.
I did pre-med, so I was very much
Mm.
in all of these different realms to build that foundation of
Mm.
knowledge around like psychology, medicine, psychiatry. And now I'm able to look at everything and parse it out
Mhm.
through different, analytical like pieces of information that I'm able to present in a way where I'm like, oh, look, you see this like maladaptive behavior that you have? It's
Mm.
not wrong. This is not wrong. This, you're not ill. This, like, look at what the context of the society you're living within looks like. And so
Mhm.
this is something that you've basically created as a maladaptive response to whatever environment you're in. And
Yeah.
so it's just it was just my way to maybe like soothe people's
Mm.
fears around themselves and sort of labeling themselves, and like, what's the word I'm looking for, basically like labeling themselves as sick, right? So
Mm.
basically right, because like words are important, right? Like the
Yeah.
way we label ourselves is super important to the way we experience ourselves. And
Mhm.
so it was one of the ways in which I'm just like, wait, let's just look at all of these things as they break down. And so I really wanted to break down this, psychiatry specifically from the lens of like the DSM-5, right? The
Mm.
biggest
Right.
library of mental disorders. And I'm just like, are these mental disorders, or are these just,
Yeah.
experiences where one person has more of it on the spectrum than someone else?
Right.
And like, what does that look like, and why is could that be related to human design? And I've actually
Mm.
found a lot of information around that, so I'm really, really excited to sort of show my findings.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I,
thanks.
I I love the trajectory that you were on, and how you're almost like turning back towards it from this
Mm,
space, of, because it almost sounds like another overlay, in the sense of,
mm,
the wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, now go, let's do this together. Um,
yeah.
because something that I've sat with, and I don't need this like affirmed or not, but like
Mhm,
the whole ADHD, that conversation, I'll have clients, before I started human design, I was solely coaching, or not solely, but it was outside of the realm of human design. And
mhm,
their process of um, adapting or working with ADHD, or those types of, or that bucket of things. So
mhm,
it's interesting to me, like open head versus defined head, and open ajna versus
mm,
defined ajna. And so I have one
yeah.
client that stayed with me the whole process. And looking at their chart, I'm like,
Mhm,
"Ugh, your 5720 is really taking you in all these different places. I don't know that it's
mm.
negative, or
Right.
so,
That's the whole idea. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I like that you've had sort of personal experience around this, because I feel like a lot of people have. Anyone
Mm.
who's really seen clients in this way, I feel like has one at one point or another needed to validate that that wasn't
Mm.
necessarily a bad thing.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's a huge thing in our society, and I feel like that's one of those places where deconditioning is going to be really helpful, but it's
Mhm.
also good for people to understand that maybe, you don't need to dive into human design head first in order to get to the point where you can decondition, right?
Totally.
It's like giving everybody a permission slip to be like, hey, you don't have to know human design. I could just break this down and see if this works for you, or see if this makes you feel better. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, a lot of it's about just kind of like pushing past the
Mm.
old programming and
Mm.
just, yeah, moving into the new.
Of like this sense that some people might have an identity, like, so they have a defined G, let's say, and then they get this
Hmm.
diagnosis. And it's like, well, this is who
Hmm.
I am, as
Mm,
opposed to maybe you and
yeah.
I with our undefined Gs are like, maybe I'm this, maybe I'm that. So
Yeah.
that's another like tracking moment that I'm like, that's another interesting potential data point of,
I like
you know,
that.
like how like fives can fifth line profiles can like fall into the victim story and like pull other people
Mm,
into the victim
hmm.
story. I definitely
Yeah.
resonated with that. I was like, but all these things happen to me. But, as
Hmm.
opposed to what I appreciate about deconditioning is it's that loose handling of these experiences. And
Mm,
maybe I don't need this title or that title or this diagnosis or that diagnosis. And for whatever reason, Joe Dispenza is coming in
hmm.
as another framework. And what I appreciate about Joe's work is like, what do I want to feel? And can I hold that
Mm,
feeling and see where that might evolve towards? Which is also another
yeah.
tricky element. We don't necessarily have to go there, but it's a tricky element. Like, am I manifesting? I don't know. I'm not a manifester. La la
Mm,
la la la. So,
yeah, that's definitely a deep I feel like that's a conversation we can have for a very, very long time. Um, you brought up a lot of really, really interesting points, and I like that. I like the sort of, maybe the reframing of the open centers as
mm,
maybe even a gift, right? And
mhm,
not necessarily like telling people like, hey, this is great, but just like showing them like,
mhm,
this is what you don't have to deal with. You know what I mean?
mhm,
And I like that a lot. I feel like whenever we talk about like you mentioned, with Joe Dispenza's work is like, what do you want to feel? I feel like that's usually somewhat of a challenging conversation for me, just because the 4-1, right? It's almost like
mm,
I'm on this very specific path,
mhm,
that maybe I don't necessarily deal with certain issues that other people do, right? Especially when you have like I feel like with a transpersonal profile, it's maybe a little bit more predictable, whereas like when you have like a right angle, it's like, what are
uh-huh,
you creating, right? It's like, yes,
mm,
you have that choice.
mm,
So that's, I feel like, a very
ah,
interesting nuance there. I feel like I have so much to say, just kind of in like playing with what you mentioned. Also,
yeah,
just small thing to go back to when you
please.
mentioned about ADHD and that bucket, because it is very much a bucket, so many comorbidities. um Usually the first thing that comes to mind, and I usually say it as a joke, like whenever a client comes to me for one
Mm,
reason or another, I'm usually like, uh maybe be open to the fact that you might be an alien. I mean, it's just, who knows, you know what I mean? Just
oh,
because of that whole like
yeah,
mutation in 2027, it's almost like nothing happens like right away, right? Like things take
yeah,
time. Like, we've had ADHD and autism for a while, but it started
right,
showing up more and more and more. And then who knows, maybe that's connected to the raves. So like there's this whole thing, right?
right.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to kind of maybe like get some people thinking about these things because it's coming up, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like also the stabilization of the emotional wave, like that's also a big topic. So I feel like just time wise, that the
Mm,
psychiatry breakdown, I think, is important, just because of how we're
yeah.
moving into the space where we're like, are things going to be the same this way? No. So it's like this transitory phase towards something that I think a lot of people have a lot of anxiety about. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, just kind of like painting a picture where it's like, look, it's gonna take a little bit time. Things are gonna be different. No need to freak out, but like, here's the data.
Mm-hmm.
So, sorry, I
Yeah.
said so much about this. Yeah.
No, I welcome whatever wants to come out.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like people are touchy about 2027, but I
Mm.
enjoy it. I enjoy thinking about the things that are possible for all of us.
Well, in hearing you use the term matrix and then
Mhm.
thinking about like I saw Matrix the movie, like, in the theaters or whatever, I'm curious, like that's what you're referencing, right? Like I want to be clear. Are you talking about like the sacred geometry? Like, could you speak to what you mean when you say the matrix?
Mm. Oh, that's great. I like that because yeah, sometimes when I think I'm saying a certain thing, it may not be kind of through the same lens as maybe some, yeah, thank you. Um, when I say matrix, I'm basically talking about the Maya. I'm talking about
Mm.
the Maya in the way that we see it today. It's
Hmm.
basically like the womb, right? Right, the technically it's the word womb of the hologram,
Mm.
right? It's very, I think, scientific in the way that I talk about it. It's basically just like a simple way of separating between like third dimensional space and like fifth dimensional space.
Mm.
Um, it's kind of like a way to express the homogenized world in a
Hmm.
sense. It's
Hmm.
just a simple way of saying that instead of kind of opening up all these different topics.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all connected. I mean, there's definitely sacred geometry within that, but
Hmm.
it's more of like, yeah, can you find the little portals within
Mm.
the normalcy of everything?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
asking that. I've never
Yeah.
really put words to
Oh, cool. Yeah.
that.
And have you seen the movie The Matrix or the series?
I think I've seen the movie. I think I saw it like, was it 15 years ago or something? Like, I don't remember. I barely remember. I just remember like the famous scene of like dodging the bullets.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it probably would be useful to watch it again. Um,
Yeah. I mean,
but
just
yeah,
in
the spoon bending is a thing. Like I've seen people do it like
ah,
here.
uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
real.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and even as I was having the experience of your speaking about your context or how you're meaning matrix to
Mhm.
reference, I was seeing places from the movie. So
Ooh,
yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
Okay, maybe I need to watch it again.
yeah. Not to impose anything, more just like I
Yeah.
think what the movie did for me was like
Hmm.
there's alternatives.
Mm,
Like this isn't
yeah,
so, you
yeah,
know. So yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
And I think this is part of it, right? Like the revolution of consciousness. I mean,
Mm, mm,
right?
yeah. I love that you use the word revolution.
I love the word revolution. I mean, I have like my Saturn is in revolution, so
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
get
that's my
it.
P sun.
Yeah,
So I'm like,
yeah.
is this my revolution? Is this my
Oh,
revolution?
I love it.
That's a
I love
at
it.
49.3. Yeah.
Three. Oh, yes. Okay.
Hmm.
Mine's in five. Interesting.
Hmm.
Okay. That's
Hmm.
cool.
Yeah.
I like that. I like
Yeah.
that. I can relate to your three with the cross of experimentation. It's like, is this my thing? Is this my
Right.
community? Is this what we're doing right now?
Right. Right.
It's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. So you'll be traveling in?
Yes, I'm so excited. I'm so stoked.
Have you visited here before?
I have not. This would be
Oh.
my first time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And you
And you
mentioned
said
that,
this is your third?
well, I live here. Um,
Oh, cool.
yeah. And that was a whole
Nice.
beautiful, so it was my Uranus opposition, and my
Oh,
ex and I were
nice.
like, I was a farmer and we were in transition. Like,
That's
anyway, it
so
was this,
cool.
yeah. So Uranus opposition was this big, like all of the tethers that was Chicago d
Mm,
got eliminated or shifted. And
wow.
then in a reading, a woman said, I don't know why, but I'm showing you in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I was like, yeah, sure. Because it's hot there. That's
That's
what my
so
head said.
funny.
And and I'm mountains.
So funny.
I'm active
Okay,
mountains.
yeah, I did
So
see that. Yeah.
yeah, so that becomes anyway, another detail. So yeah, yeah.
But you get the views. You get the nice like
Like
views, right? Yeah.
right over
Yeah.
there. Yeah. No,
Nice.
yeah, where I'm situated in my place is I'm looking at the Santa Fe Mountains and yeah. So
Beautiful. I love that
yeah.
for you. I'm so
But the
happy for you.
skies, yeah, the sky. Yeah, so it'll be interesting. You as wet kitchens, how because
Hmm.
it has a small town feel. And so
Yeah,
does it
I
feel
like that.
creative and juicy to you? Like I feel the
Mm,
land speaking. I feel
beautiful.
those spaces. Like when I hike, that's my place. And I feel like the
Mm.
fairies are like kind of, moving about.
Oh,
So,
that's so
and
beautiful. I love
yeah,
that.
coming from Chicago, there wasn't, I didn't feel a connection to people who had lived in the same place for such a generational experience. And so that was
Mm.
new for me of like, oh, so I think because of that, being a part of the New Mexico, currently referred to as New Mexico,
Hmm.
space, um, I think that adds another layer of depth of space and feeling because there's been, that longevity of tending
Mm.
and
So
nourishment.
beautiful.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
So,
wonderful. I'm so excited. I mean,
yay.
it's an understatement to say I'm excited. I'm like
Mm.
bursting. Like it's just, I can't wait.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And then will you be attending
Super
the
stoked.
whole, or will you be coming in for a portion?
Yeah. No, I'm coming in for the full thing. I just want to
Ah,
absorb the entire experience and offer whatever I can. I'm really just gonna be
wonderful.
fully in it. So yeah,
Awesome. And have you
full
done
kitchens
much,
experience.
have you done much in aura? Like with
I
people who
have
are
not.
so full on with human design?
No, this will be my first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and to the point of you speaking to human design offers a language, like we've been doing human design
Mm,
speak back and forth. And so
I love it.
it's
It's
it's all
medicine to
my
me.
brain is thinking about. Like I'm listening
Same.
to an interview online with this celebrity or that celebrity, and I was like, what's their chart? And I look it
Hmm.
up and I do all of that. Um,
Yeah,
but now it doesn't have
I
to be a
love that.
celebrity. I have their charts because they're attendees of
Yeah,
anyway. So yeah,
it's
I'll be
such a
curious.
gift.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's such a gift to be able to see the diversity in the charts. I took one
Mm.
look and my brain almost exploded. I was
Uh,
just like, these connections, I've never seen what? Like just the awe, you know what I mean? Like the 11 ones in my chart are like, ah! It's like, oh
11.
wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
11 ones.
Yeah.
Wow.
Lots of
Wow.
ones.
Well, to that point, something that's recently cracked my mind is
Hmm.
looking at nodes. And you
Hmm.
know how, like, so I'm in my nodes, I'm a 2-4, or that's
Hmm.
the numbers. But then
Hmm.
sometimes there's 4-5, 1-2. I'm like, wait, how are we breaking protocol and going with a different? Anyway, that was like,
Yeah.
because I don't study astrology or those systems. Human design was like my first in a structured way of coming into these, kind of, anyway, cosmic
Cool.
blueprinties. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know if that's
Cool.
ever tracked for you. Like, how can you be a 2-1 in your nodes? Like that to me, it was like, I don't get it. So
I've never looked at
mm,
that, but now that you say that, I'll definitely take a look and see if I see anything because yeah, I mean, I feel like because the nodes move in a retrograde fashion, and
hmm
that's something I've wondered about because, they move in the opposite direction.
oh,
And
sure.
so they're going from 6 to 1 in
hmm
terms of lines. So I wonder, I don't
Mm,
know. I definitely want to look into that. That's interesting.
yeah.
Because I wonder if it's like the like base theory where it's like,
Oh.
one is it's like, 5, 4, 4, 3, 3,
Mm,
2, 2, 1,
hmm
1, 5, so it's I
Right.
wonder,
Yeah.
yeah, something to look into for sure.
There's probably people who are listening to this who are like throwing their phones, that kind of analogy, like, it's explained. You guys not knowing this. Very
Please,
possible. Yeah.
please let us know. I'm curious. There's a chat if you'd like to chime in on anything that we mentioned. I love hearing feedback.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has been so delightful. So delightful.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is
Yeah.
beautiful. I'm so, so happy to be speaking with you. And you asked such wonderful and like
Oh,
insightful questions.
thank you. I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Anything
cool.
else to speak to? Do you want to promote anything? Is there anything before we say goodbye while you have the microphone?
Oh, thank you. There's a lot brewing for me at the moment, and
Mm,
everything is like because it's on this like divine
mm,
timing track. I never
mm.
know when things are gonna come out. But just because you mentioned the two, personality versus design,
Yeah.
I actually started writing a mini course about sort of
Mm,
like how that works
yeah.
and basically the nuance within like using strategy and authority for people who are unsure, because I get a lot of questions around like, wait, but how does this work? And and I know some people just don't want to go through that experiment, even though it's very nourishing and
Mm,
rich in
mm,
experience.
hmm.
But if there's a shortcut I can provide for people, that's what I want to do. So that should be coming out soon, but timing,
Cool.
who knows?
Cool.
But, something useful for people.
And is that the sort of thing that where you would promote it or launch or announce it on your Instagram? Do you have a mailing
Yeah,
list on your website?
I do. I have a mailing list and Instagram,
Okay,
so it's probably where it'll go. Yeah.
cool.
Good, good, good looking out. Thank you.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, I want all the people to find you who want to. Yeah,
Aw, I appreciate that. Yeah,
yeah.
my Instagram, I believe, yeah, it's galactic.blueprint if anybody wants to
Love it.
tag along and see what I'm doing.
Awesome.
Jump on
Lovely.
the train.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see you in less than a month.
I'm so excited. And thank you so much for this beautiful
Mm,
gift. I'm so stoked that we got to chat and
same.
that this will be recorded and get to watch it again.
Yeah, same, same.